I was wrong, he said. About everything. About her. About... He stopped, started again. About you. I shouldn't have chosen her. I made a mistake. I know that you still have feelings for me. 7 years, Cheha. You cannot simply stop feeling things because the situation changed. I tilted my head. You married my uncle, Yi Jianwu said, with growing confidence, because you were angry with me. I understand that, but we both know you did it out of spite. You wanted me to see what I had lost. You wanted me to regret. You do not actually... Stop, I said. I want to make sure, I said, very pleasantly, that I am understanding you correctly. You are suggesting that I married the Grand Prince, a man of significantly more intelligence, integrity, and genuine affection than you have displayed in the combined sum of our 7-year acquaintance, as a way to spite you. He opened his mouth. You are also suggesting, I continued, that I do not actually love my husband, that the 7 years of our engagement, in which I was treated as a convenience rather than a partner, supersedes everything I have experienced in this marriage. I paused. And your solution is that I should elope with you. You must think, I said, that I am extraordinarily foolish. You might be an idiot who does not think, I said, but that does not mean everyone around you is equally foolish. His expression shifted. You are standing in my husband's garden, I said, telling me that my marriage, which is the best thing that has happened to me in all my years of living, is a performance of emotion directed at you. Do you hear yourself? Something in his face went from wounded to something harder. You know me, he said. He took a step forward and reached to grab my arm. I know that you... I slapped him, hard. The sound of it went across the quiet garden like a door being shut very firmly. He stood completely still. I looked at my hand. I have, I said, with perfect composure, been wanting to do that for a very long time. Thank you for giving me the occasion. Yi Jianwu's hand went to his face. His expression had passed through shock and was arriving at something that had more heat in it. You... He reached out to try and grab me again. A hand closed around his wrist. Yi Kangwu had appeared beside me at some point. He held Yi Jianwu's wrist with the specific grip of someone who has decided how much pressure to apply, and is applying exactly that much. I heard a crack, the sound of bone breaking, and then the scream that followed right after. Yi Jianwu's face had gone very pale. Yi Jianwu, Yi Kangwu said. His voice was even, completely even. The evenness of a man who is not angry in the impulsive sense, but in the structural sense, the cold, organized anger. You are in my household, he said, trying to grab my wife. He looked at Yi Jianwu with the expression the court called formidable, and that I had learned meant something considerably more specific than that. Do you understand how little consideration I am currently extending to the fact that we share blood? And do you put me in your eyes at all, reaching for my wife in my own garden? Yi Jianwu's face had gone gray. The propriety of this court, Yi Kangwu said, exists for reasons. One of them is preventing situations that would require me to do something that cannot be undone. He released Yi Jianwu's wrist. I am being extremely restrained. He turned to the garden entrance. Guards, he said. 4 of his personal guards appeared with the promptness of people who had been at a discreet distance and paying close attention. His Highness will be returned to his residential quarters. He will remain there pending the formal arrangements for his exile assignment. If he attempts to leave, you will send word to me directly. He paused. Throw him out. My mother woke me before dawn. Not gently. She pulled back the sleeping mat covers with the energy of a woman who has made a decision and intends to see it executed before anyone has the chance to talk her out of it. Get up, she said. Wash your face. Put on the pearl hairpin, the one your grandmother left you, and wear the blue silk, the good blue, not the everyday one. I looked at her in the dark. Mother, it's not yet dawn. Exactly. Move. I got up. I washed my face, I put on the good blue silk and the pearl hairpin, and let my maid dress my hair in the formal style, while the sky outside went from black to gray to the particular pale gold of early morning. Then I went to the main hall and sat in the formal reception seat and waited. My mother sat beside me, her posture perfect, her hands folded, her expression the composed face she wore when she was performing calm over something that was very far from calm. "What are we waiting for?" I asked. "Word from the palace," she replied. "The second prince's appointment ceremony is today. There has been talk." She stopped. "We are making sure we are seen to be ready. Whatever comes, the Yoon family will not be caught unprepared." I understood then. The engagement between myself and Eson to be appointed Crown Prince Yi Jun-woo had been arranged when I was 8 years old and he was 10. It had been my mother's closest friend, Empress Han Soo-yeon, who had grown up 2 doors down from my mother in the same district of the capital, who had suggested it after the 2 families spent a festival evening together and found they suited each other well. My mother had agreed, my father had agreed, the palace had agreed, and for 7 years I had been the crown prince's betrothed, learning to be gracious and soft-spoken and endlessly patient, because those were the qualities he admired, and my mother had told me, with the practical wisdom of a woman who built a business empire through reading people accurately, that a man who admires particular qualities in a woman will treat her better if she displays them. So I had displayed them. I had been demure at court functions when my natural instinct was to say exactly what I thought. I had been gentle in conversation when I wanted to be sharp. I had watched Yi Jun-woo with his careful court manners and his poet's sensibility, and I had performed, for 7 years, the version of myself he wanted me to be. And then Cha Yan-hee came back from her family's posting in the southern provinces, and Yi Jun-woo remembered that he had been in love with her since he was 15 years old. We sat in the main hall. We waited. Outside, Han Yong was waking up. The announcement reached us through a palace runner at mid-morning. Not a personal messenger, a palace runner, the kind sent to deliver official court proclamations to affected noble households. My mother took the document, she read it, her face did not move. She set the document on the table between us. I read it. Crown Prince Yi Jun-woo had, in a formal court ceremony attended by all senior officials and ministers, publicly declared Cha Yan-hee, daughter of the Minister of Rights, formerly of the Southern Posting, as his crown princess consort. Without prior notice to my family, without the formal dissolution of our existing engagement, without the basic courtesy of a private word before making it a matter of public court record. My mother sat for a long moment in the silence of the main hall. Then she laughed. It was not a warm laugh. It was the sound a woman makes when something has happened that is simultaneously infuriating and so audacious that it briefly defeats the capacity for fury. 7 years, she said. 7 years of festival gifts to that palace, 7 years of correct behavior, 7 years of making sure you were everything they said they wanted. She picked up her teacup, set it down without drinking. Not even the courtesy of a dissolution letter. I looked at the document. 7 years. Every lantern festival, every dragon boat celebration, every mid-autumn gathering where I had sat beside him in the approved blue silk and said the approved gracious things and watched him watch me with the slightly distracted approval of a man who is satisfied with what he has selected. To say there were no feelings would be a lie, but sitting in the main hall with the document in front of me, I found that what I felt was not the grief I had expected. It was something quieter, the specific relief of a woman who has been performing for 7 years and has just been told, very clearly, that the performance was over. She arrived before we had finished our tea. The head steward appeared in the main hall doorway with his shoulders doing the particular work they did when he was delivering news he found uncomfortable. "Madam, the Empress is here. She is waiting outside. Should we let her in?" My mother stood up from the main seat. "She is the Empress," my mother said, with a cold precision that could have cut glass. "And I am but a general's wife. How would I dare stop her from coming in? Hurry up. Come with me to receive her properly." She did not wait for him to move. She was already walking toward the entrance when the Empress walked through it. Empress Han Su-yan came in with a full retinue, palace maids in formation, 2 senior eunuchs, the full visual architecture of imperial rank arriving at a private household. She was wearing the ceremonial outer robe she reserved for formal court functions. She had, in other words, come dressed for the visit she was making. Her face, however, was wearing the expression I remembered from years of knowing her as my mother's closest friend, the warm, slightly apologetic smile of a woman who knows she is about to have a difficult conversation and is hoping warmth will make it easier. "Sister." She came forward and reached for my mother's hand. "Don't be so formal. We grew up together. Our bond is closer than most people's. There is no need." My mother pulled her hand back. She dropped to her knees in the formal greeting bow. I followed immediately behind her. "This subject's wife does not dare accept you calling her sister, Your Majesty." My mother's voice was perfectly even. "Please, take the seat of honor." The Empress looked at her with the expression of a woman who has just had her script firmly redirected. She sat. Tea was served, the correct silence was observed. Then the Empress sighed in the manner of someone who has prepared what she intends to say and is now delivering it. "This is the Crown Prince's fault entirely," she said. "He did not give your family the proper notice before the announcement. It was wrong of him. I came today specifically to acknowledge this." My mother looked at her steadily. "Your Majesty is gracious," she said. "May I ask how Your Majesty intends to resolve the matter? The engagement was formalized 7 years ago through proper channels. It is on record with the court." The Empress's expression shifted slightly, just slightly. "The announcement has already been made publicly," she said, "and recorded in the official court register. It cannot be undone." "I see," my mother said. "Your daughter will simply have to accept the position of imperial consort. It is still an honored position. She would be within the palace walls, provided for, respected." "Sister." My mother's voice came down on the word like a door closing. The Empress stopped speaking. "I have called you sister since we were 6 years old. We have shared every major event of each other's lives. I know you, and because I know you, I will say this plainly. Do not mistake my manners for agreement, and do not mistake my silence for acceptance." The Empress's warmth receded. What replaced it was the face she wore in court, composed, authoritative, and capable of being quite cold. "Don't think that just because I let you call me sister a few times you overestimate your position," she said. "The world will soon belong to my son. That I came here today is already more courtesy than protocol requires. I advise you to be realistic. Accept the imperial consort arrangement. Your daughter has a good future available to her. Do not throw it away over pride." She paused and looked at me directly for the first time since she had entered the hall. "Your daughter was engaged to the Crown Prince from an early age. If she is released from that engagement publicly, no family of standing will marry her. That is the reality. I am offering a way to preserve her standing." I met her eyes. 7 years of practicing gracious silence. I was done with that. "Your Majesty is too kind," I said. The Empress looked slightly startled. I had never spoken in a formal setting without being addressed first. "But the question of who I marry need not concern the palace. I am the Yoon household's first and only daughter. My family's concern for my future is sufficient." The Empress looked at me for a long moment. My mother straightened in her seat. "Your Majesty," she said with the pleasant tone of a woman who has made her final decision and is simply informing you of it, "I, Kang Min Jung, have many talents, but I know how to make money. My daughter will never lack for anything I can provide. And as for who will marry her, you do not need to bother yourself with such trivialities." The Empress stood. Don't think we cannot do without you. When you regret this, do not come to me on your knees," she said as she walked out. My mother sat in the silence for a moment. Then she scoffed. "My daughter as an imperial consort? In your dreams." I slept through most of the afternoon. When I came to the main hall for dinner, both my father and my eldest brother were there, which made no sense by any normal logic. My father, General Yoon Chang-sik, was supposed to leave for the northern border the following morning. My eldest brother, Yoon Ji-hoon, had been living essentially in the Board of Justice building for 4 consecutive months, barely coming home to change his court robes. "Father," I said, looking between them, "you're supposed to head back to the border tomorrow. And you," I turned to Ji-hoon, "you haven't taken a single day away from the court in years. What is happening?" My father smiled at me with the unhurried warmth of a man who has decided something. "My chronic pain has flared up," he said. "I am staying home for a while to rest and to spend more time with you." He looked at me with such unguarded love that I had to look at the table for a moment. "I have been at the Board of Justice for 4 years without a single day of rest," Ji-hoon said, with the stone-faced seriousness that he had been wearing for so long I had almost forgotten his face could do other things. "I am tired. I have taken a leave to rest." "Your second brother," my mother said to no one in particular, "sent word that the case backlog at the Judicial Review Office has been redistributed to other officers. He will be home within the week." I looked at all 3 of them. My mother met my eyes. "Enough talk," she said. "It's rare we're all together. Sit down." We sat. The food arrived. My mother immediately began transferring everything I liked into my bowl, moving through the dishes with the focused efficiency of a woman who communicates best through action. My father added a piece of braised fish. Even Ji-hoon, who had not smiled at a family dinner in 2 years, reached over and placed a piece of celery, my most hated vegetable, which he had been trying to make me eat since childhood, into my bowl with the deadpan expression of a man who considers this an act of affection. I looked at the celery. I put it aside. They let me. I had been engaged to Yi Jun-woo since I was 8 years old. I had watched him grow from a boy with careful court manners into the crown prince he was now, and I had shaped myself around what he wanted for so long that somewhere in the middle of the process I had stopped noticing I was doing it. My mother's hand warm on my arm, my father's eyes steady and certain, my brother's completely unconvincing attempt at looking like the celery was an accident. I was not going to bring Yi Jun-woo's name into this dinner, not tonight. "The celery is there because you love me," I said to Ji-hoon. "The celery is there because vegetables are important for your health," he said, not blinking. "I love you too," I said. He looked at the wall, but one corner of his mouth rose. The palace runner arrived the next morning. Yi Jun-woo wanted to see me. I considered the summons for a moment. Then I put on a plain outer robe, not the good blue, not the formal presentation silk, the everyday gray-green I wore when I had nowhere to perform for. I dressed my hair simply. I did not wear the pearl hairpin. I went. "Subject Yoon Che-ha greets your highness," I said, performing the formal bow as I entered the audience chamber. "Long life to your highness." "Che-ha!" He was up from the throne before I had finished, crossing the room with the slightly anxious energy of a man who has rehearsed this conversation and is no longer certain it will go as rehearsed. "Rise. There's no need for formalities between us." I rose without his assistance. I stepped back 2 paces. He stopped. "Are you upset with me?" he asked. "This subject would not dare," I said pleasantly. "Your Highness is the son of the Emperor, above all and one above 10,000. Your Highness may marry whoever your Highness wishes. I understand this completely." He looked at me with an expression I recognized, the slightly wounded look of a man who had expected tears and was not sure what to do with composure. Before he could say whatever he had prepared next, an attendant appeared at the door. "Your Highness, Her Highness the Crown Princess has arrived." Yi Junwoo's urgency immediately redirected itself toward the door. He abandoned me mid-sentence and walked toward it. I turned. Che Yanhee stayed in the entrance of the audience chamber in a red phoenix robe, her hand resting against the doorframe with the practiced fragility of a woman who has learned that appearing delicate is a form of power. She was beautiful in the way of someone who has refined beauty into a strategy, every detail deliberate, every gesture calculated to produce a specific response. "Your Highness," she said softly, leaning slightly against the door, "you were such a rush this morning, and last night you were so exhausted. I was worried about your health, so I made pastries myself from the small kitchen." She looked up at him with the expression of a woman who knows exactly what that look produces. Yi Junwoo reached her in 3 steps, his face transforming with the specific warmth of a man who saves his best self entirely for one person. They stood at the door being tender with each other for a substantial interval. Then they remembered I existed. "Oh," Che Yanhee looked past his shoulder with the expression of pleasant surprise. "Is this not Sister Yoon? When did you arrive? Your Highness, you should have told me we had a guest." She made a small, playful gesture at Yi Junwoo's arm and then walked toward me with her hands outstretched. I had seen this particular gesture before, the reaching hands, the warm approach, the performance of sisterly affection. I knew exactly what came after it. Her hands reached for my arm. I moved my arm. A slight movement, less than a step. Che Yanhee swayed, her hands found nothing. She arranged herself on the floor in the gradual, theatrical way of someone who has practiced falling without hurting themselves and knows exactly how to arrange their expression as they land. She looked up at me from the floor. "I know that sister doesn't like me, but I am the crown princess now, not that helpless daughter of a 5th-rank official that sister once knew. How dare sister push me?" I looked at her on the floor. Then I tilted my head. "I did not push Her Highness," I said. My voice was pleasant, conversational even. "But since Her Highness has introduced the topic of rank, I notice that Her Highness has not yet greeted me with the proper form for addressing the daughter of a 1st-ranked general, specifically appointed by the late Emperor." I looked at her with a smile that did not reach the rest of my face. Perhaps the excitement of the position has been a distraction. I understand. These things take time to learn. Che Yanhee's smile flickered, just once, just for a fraction of a moment. Then it was back, warm and wounded and perfectly arranged. Yi Junwoo was beside her, helping her up, his face torn between concern for her and specific discomfort. "Cheha," he started. "I did not push her," I said again, this time directly to him. "There is a physician outside this chamber who can confirm there are no injuries if Your Highness requires documentation." I paused. "I would also suggest, respectfully, that Your Highness formally dissolve our engagement today, put it in the court register with the same efficiency as yesterday's announcement. This subject no longer wishes to occupy a position that is clearly inconvenient for everyone." I performed the formal bow. "I wish Your Highness many years of marital bliss." I walked out. Cha Yanhee POV. I watched Yoon Cha-ha walk out of the audience chamber. Yi Junwoo was saying something beside me, something about how she had always been gentle before, how he had been wrong about her character. I made the appropriate sounds of response without registering the content. I was watching the door where Yoon Cha-ha had just disappeared through. Yoon Cha-ha, who had looked at me on the floor with that pleasant, unhurried expression, who had not been flustered, who had not cried or raged or done any of the things that I expected her to do. I pressed my hand to my chest and let Yi Junwoo help me to the nearest seat. I would need to be more careful. Yoon Cha-ha was not performing grief or acting as expected. That was a problem. The engagement dissolution reached the official court record 3 days later. My mother received the document, read it, and set it on the table between us with the same precise stillness she had shown for every document this week. "Good," she said. "Good," I agreed. The performance was over. For the first time in 7 years, I had no role to inhabit, no version of myself to maintain, no criteria to measure my behavior against. I was simply Yoon Che-ha, the one who said what she thought, noticed what other people missed, and had absolutely no patience for people who performed virtue while practicing its opposite. It felt significantly better. 2 weeks passed. The household was beginning to settle into its new rhythm, my father's chronic pain showing no signs of improvement sufficient to return him to the border, my eldest brother maintaining his position that 4 years without rest was a medical matter requiring extended recovery, my second brother home and eating 3 times the appropriate quantity at every meal, when the head steward appeared at the entrance to the main hall with an expression we had not seen on him before, somewhere between confused and alarmed. "Madam," he said to my mother, there is a visitor. He does not have an appointment. He says—" The steward stopped, appeared to recalibrate. "He says he would like to speak with the general and madam regarding Lady Yoon." My mother looked up from her accounts. "Who is it?" she said. The steward straightened his robes in the manner of a man preparing to deliver information he is not certain will be received calmly. "His Highness the Grand Prince," he said. The room went very still. My father and mother exchanged a look across the table. I was sitting in the inner room adjacent to the main hall, visible from where I sat through a gap in the partition screen, but not from the main entrance. A formal partition screen with latticed upper panels through which sound traveled clearly and movement was visible as shadow. My mother made a decision. "Ask the Grand Prince to wait in the outer reception hall," she said to the steward. "We will receive him presently." Then she turned to me. She looked at the partition screen. She looked at me. She said nothing. I stayed where I was. Yi Kong-woo, the emperor's younger brother, was 31 years old. He had the emperor's build but not the emperor's managed court expression. He sat across from my parents in the outer reception hall with the particular stillness of a man who has enough actual authority that he has stopped feeling the need to perform it. My father spoke first. "Your Highness does us great honor with this visit. What brings you to our household?" Yi Kong-woo set his teacup down on the table. He looked at my father with the directness of someone who has decided the conventional approach would waste time he does not wish to waste. "I would like to request the hand of Lady Yoon Che-ha in marriage," he said. The silence that followed was the specific quality of silence produced when a room full of people all process the same unexpected information simultaneously, and none of them have yet reached the point of response. My mother recovered first. "Your Highness," she said carefully, "this household is deeply honored, but, if I may ask plainly, on what basis has Your Highness formed this intention? My daughter and Your Highness have had no formal acquaintance." Yi Kong-woo looked at my mother. Then, and I noticed this from behind the partition screen, and it took me a moment to understand what I was seeing, his gaze moved, briefly, to the partition screen itself, not to the gap where I was seated, to the screen as a whole, a glance so brief it could have been casual, but it was not casual. He knew I was there. I kept perfectly still. "Approximately a year and a half ago," Yi Kong-woo said, returning his attention to my parents, "I was passing through the market district near the eastern gate. There was a disturbance at one of the roadside food stalls. A nobleman, from a mid-ranking household, not one I recognized, had taken a liking to the stall owner's daughter's looks. The girl was perhaps 16. The nobleman had made it clear that he intended to take her whether her family agreed or not. He had 3 men with him. The stall owner was elderly and alone. The market crowd," Yi Kong-woo paused briefly, "watched in the way that crowds watch things that are not their business. My father's expression had gone very attentive. One person intervened, Yi Kangwu said, a young woman. She stepped between the nobleman and the girl, and she told him, in a voice that the entire market street could hear, that what he was proposing was a violation of the law protection codes established under the late emperor's administrative reforms. She cited the specific statute. She was not shouting. She was not afraid. She was simply correct, and she intended everyone present to know it. I remembered that afternoon with the clarity of something that had cost me considerable trouble at the time. The nobleman had been livid. He had threatened me with everything he could think of in ascending order of severity. I had remained where I was and repeated the statute each time he finished. The nobleman attempted to assert that his rank exempted him from the administrative code, Yi Kangwu continued. The young woman's response was to suggest, politely, that they take the matter to the magistrate hall and confirm this, directly. A brief pause. The nobleman refused to go. But she made him go anyway, my father said. Not a question. She made him go anyway, Yi Kangwu confirmed. The magistrate ruled in the stall owner's family's favor. The nobleman paid the protective settlement and left. The young woman ensured the family was properly documented before she left, so that the nobleman could not return and cause them trouble. He looked at my father. She did all of this alone, without assistance, against a man who might have been of a higher rank than herself, in front of a crowd that had chosen not to see what was happening. The room was quiet. My mother looked at her teacup. That young woman, she said, with the careful tone of someone confirming what they already suspect, was my daughter. Yes, Yi Kangwu said. Another silence. Your Highness, my father said, I will ask you directly, what is it about what you have just described that made you decide you wished to marry her? Yi Kangwu was quiet for a moment, not uncertain, the quiet of someone choosing words precisely. Because she saw something wrong, he said, and she did not look for someone else to handle it. She did not calculate whether it was her business. She did not weigh the cost of involvement against the comfort of uninvolvement. She simply acted because it was right. He looked at my father steadily. That quality is rare, even more so during this time where people choose to turn a blind eye towards things that doesn't concern or affect them. I have been looking for it for a long time. My father and mother exchanged another of their 4-second conversations. Then my mother spoke. Your Highness has done our household great honor today, she said. But this is not a decision that can be made quickly, and more importantly, she looked at the partition screen, not attempting to conceal the direction of her gaze, it is not a decision that belongs to us. It belongs to our daughter. We will need time to consider, and the final answer will be hers to give. Yi Kangwu inclined his head. Of course, he said. He rose. He performed the farewell courtesy. He walked toward the main entrance. At the threshold, he paused. The magistrate hall, he said without turning around. The stall owner's family, they were adequately provided for afterward. I made sure of it. He said it as if it were a small and obvious thing. Then he left. I had known she was behind the partition screen from the moment I entered the outer reception hall. It was not a difficult calculation. The slight adjustment in her mother's posture when she sat down, the specific angle at which the inner room door had been left, the quality of silence from that direction that was different from an empty room. She had been listening to every word. Good. I had decided some months after that afternoon in the market district that when the moment came, and I had believed it would come, that I would not perform the conventional approach. I would tell the truth and allow her to make an informed decision. What I had not told her parents was that when she had stood at the entrance of the magistrate hall and the officers had been weighing the nobleman's rank against the stall owner's evidence and wondering if they could afford to offend him, I had shown my token and asked for the magistrate, ordering him that the matter should be judged fairly and that they need not fear any consequence. The magistrate had nodded. The judgment had been what it should have been regardless. The evidence was clear. She had won on her own. I had simply made sure the field was level. I had not told her parents this because it was not relevant to what I was asking. Neither had I chosen to help her because I intended to leverage it. I walked out of the Yoon household into the afternoon and thought about the woman behind a partition screen who had listened to my every word with the stillness of someone taking very precise measure. I had not been nervous often in his life. However, I realized, slightly nervous now. My parents spent 2 days discussing it. I spent 2 days being unable to think about anything else. Grand Prince Yi Kong-woo, the emperor's younger brother, widely described by the court as formidable and difficult, running military inspection circuits and border agreements independently, apparently with more efficiency than the court's standard channels preferred. And for a year and a half, since the afternoon in the market district that had cost me 3 hours of my day and a considerable amount of energy I had not particularly wanted to spend, he had been watching me. How did I never notice? I said to my maid Bok. Bok had the expression of someone who had opinions and was choosing carefully which ones to share. Lady, she said, you were engaged. You were not looking for anyone else to notice you. This was accurate. He knew I was behind the partition screen, I said. Yes, Bok said. He could have said so. He chose not to, Bok said. He gave you the information and let you hear it as though you were not there, so you could consider it without the performance of being addressed. I looked at her. When did you become so perceptive? I said. I have been your maid for 11 years, she said. It was unavoidable. On the 3rd day, I told my parents I would like to meet him before any decision was made. They arranged it through appropriate channels. The venue selected was a tea house in the quieter district of the capital, a private room, no audience, the correct balance of formality and practicality. I wore a dark-colored everyday hanbok, simple and plain. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at the low table with a teacup in his hand and a document he set aside when I entered. I sat across from him. He poured tea into the 2nd cup without asking whether I wanted it and pushed it toward me. Lady Yoon, he said. Your Highness, I said. A pause. He was looking at me with an expression I had not been expecting, not the cool court composure I had anticipated, something more direct than that. I imagine, he said, you have questions. I imagine, I said, Your Highness already knows what most of them are. The corner of his mouth moved. It was the smallest thing, a fraction of a shift, but something in it was warmer than anything I had anticipated from a man the court called difficult. Ask them, he said. I wrapped my hands around the teacup. A year and a half is a long time to watch someone without speaking, I said. You were engaged, he said simply. There was nothing to say while that was the case. And now that it is not? Now I am sitting in a tea house, having tea. I looked at him. He looked back at me. Your Highness, I said, I will also be direct, since that appears to be the approach we are both taking. I have conditions. I expected you would, he said. 1, I set my cup down. I would be your primary consort, and your only consort. I will not share my husband with secondary wives or concubines, and I will not enter a marriage that leaves that possibility open. He nodded. 2, you will treat me with respect. as an equal in our household, with genuine consideration for my judgment and my opinions, not as a decoration or ceremonial position. Yes, he said. 3. I agree to all of them, he said. I stopped. He had not let me finish the third condition. Your Highness does not know what the third condition is, I said. It does not matter, he said. I agree to it. I looked at him. He met my eyes with an expression of complete composure. You agreed very easily, I said. Did you expect difficulty? I expected negotiation, I said. Conditions of this nature are not standard. They are not difficult conditions, he said. They are simply what I would have done regardless. I looked at him for a long moment. He looked back at me and did not explain further. I will inform my parents of my decision, I said finally. He inclined his head. Will you take more tea? He asked. I stared at him. You are asking me if I want more tea. You have barely touched the first cup, he said reasonably. I picked up the cup. I drank the tea. I was not going to examine what had just happened in this room too closely. Not yet. Not here. But I was aware, in the way one is aware of a change in weather before it fully arrives, that something had shifted in the architecture of my expectations.
Yi Kang-woo POV. She had looked at me when I agreed to the conditions with the particular expression of someone who has been prepared for resistance and is rapidly recalibrating in the absence of it. I had not explained that I agreed easily because there was nothing difficult about agreeing to things I had already planned to do. I had not planned on taking any other woman. I had not planned on treating her as anything other than what she was, the most capable and clear-eyed person he had encountered in all my years of navigating a court full of people who were neither. The question of respect and equality was not a concession, it was simply accurate. Of course, I did not mention any of these. She had enough information to make her decision. I would let her make it. My parents agreed. The following morning, an official decree arrived at the Yoon household bearing the Emperor's seal, formally documenting the betrothal of Lady Yoon Chai-ha to His Highness Grand Prince Yi Kang-woo, with the full weight of imperial recognition attached. My mother held the document for a long moment. "Are you certain?" she asked. "Yes," I said. My mother looked at me with the expression she wore when she had assessed a situation thoroughly and found the outcome acceptable. "Good," she said. "Then let's begin the preparations." The marriage was performed in the 3rd month of the following year. The court talked about it for weeks before and after. The senior officials talked about propriety and precedent. Several ministers submitted papers on the subject to the emperor, who read them and disregarded them with the equanimity of a man who has decided his brother is allowed to make this particular choice. My mother attended the ceremony with the expression of a woman who has been proven correct in a significant assessment and is maintaining appropriate modesty about it. My father attended with the chronic pain that had been flaring up regularly since the morning of Yi Jun-woo's announcement, which had somehow not interfered with his ability to stand for the entire ceremony with perfect posture. My eldest brother, Ji-hun, attended in his court robes and spent the ceremony checking the guest arrangements for protocol errors. He found 2. He corrected them quietly and told no one. The emperor attended. The Empress attended. Yi Jun-woo attended with Cha Yeon-hee on his arm, wearing the crown princess robes that were her official costume now, her face arranged in the warm grace that was its public setting. She watched the ceremony with the perfect expression of someone attending a state function of moderate personal significance. I became Grand Princess Consort Yoon. My rank was now above Crown Princess Consort. Yi Jun-woo would address me as Royal Aunt. In the receiving line after the formal ceremony, he reached me and performed the ceremonial bow, the bow of a crown prince to the wife of the emperor's brother. "Royal Aunt," he said. His jaw was tight, his posture was correct, His expression was the controlled composure of a man who has decided to be a professional about something that is costing him every ounce of pride he possesses. "Crown Prince," I said pleasantly. Beside me, Yi Kong-woo said nothing. He did not need to. Marriage to Yi Kong-woo was not what I had expected. I had spent 7 years practicing to be a crown prince's consort, learning the specific rhythms of palace ceremonial life, the correct order of ritual observances, the hierarchy of court relationships, and which ones required which degree of management. Yi Kong-woo's household ran entirely differently. On the 3rd morning of our marriage, I came to the main hall to find him already at the writing desk with his inspection reports spread across the surface in a pattern that looked like chaos and was, I realized after a moment, a very precise system. "You arrange by regional circuit before sorting by date," I said. He looked up. "Yes," he said. "Most people try to sort by date first. It is less efficient. The regional relationships between data points are more significant than the chronological ones," I said. "You see the pattern faster if you group the geography." He looked at me for a moment. Then he moved one stack of documents to the side, creating space on the other side of the desk. "Sit," he said. "I have not offered to help," I said. "You were about to," he said, and went back to his reports. I sat down. We worked through the morning in a silence that was not uncomfortable in the way that silences between people who do not know each other well tend to be. At mid-morning, he pushed a document across the table without looking up. "Eastern Garrison Authority," he said. "Something is wrong with it. Tell me what." I read the document. "The authority is listed by title, not by name," I said. "The title was reassigned several months ago. This agreement, as written, has no binding party on the Eastern implementation side." He looked up. There was something in his expression, not surprise exactly, but the particular attention of someone who has just had a question they did not know they were asking answered. "My mother's business trade routes run through that circuit," I explained. "Our managers report weekly. I remembered the reassignment." He picked up the document. "I have 3 ministers who reviewed this across 4 months," he said. "Not one of them caught this." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Yoon Chai-ha." "Yes. From this point," he said, "I would like you to review everything before it reaches final authorization. Everything." I looked at him. He returned to his reports with the expression of a man who has made a reasonable administrative decision and is now acting accordingly. "You would give your official correspondence to your wife to review," I said. "I would give it to the most competent person available," he said, "which in this household is currently you." I stared at him. He did not look up. "That is," I searched for the word, "that is the most efficiently expressed compliment I have ever received. I am not known for inefficiency," he said. I looked at the report in my hands. "Yi Kong-woo," I said. He looked up. It was the first time I had used his name without the title. "I was not expecting you," I said simply. He held my gaze for a moment. "I know," he said. "Fortunately, I was expecting you." It took me approximately 3 weeks to discover that Yi Kong-woo was, in private, considerably less composed than the court believed. The discovery began with the accounts. I had revised the household account system on the first week. The previous one had 3 redundant categories producing contradictory summaries, and on the morning the head steward presented the revised ledger, Yi Kong-woo had reviewed it, confirmed it was correct, and handed it back. What he also did, that evening he brought me a small dish of the pressed pine cake from the kitchen that I had mentioned in passing 2 days earlier was the only thing I genuinely looked forward to at formal court functions. No comment, no ceremony. He set it on the table beside my work and went back to his reports. I looked at the pine cake. I looked at him. He was reading a document with complete attention. "You remembered," I said. "I remember most things," he said, without looking up.
You went to the kitchen specifically to request it. The cook required direction, he said. I picked up the pine cake. This is a very elaborate way of saying thank you for fixing the accounts, I said. He turned a page of his document. Is it? He said. I ate the pine cake and did not push the point. The second discovery happened at the formal banquet in the second month, when Minister Che made an observation about the northern border levy that was not only incorrect, but was incorrect in a way that had significant downstream implications for 3 provincial administrative districts. I said so. The table went very quiet. Minister Che looked at me with the expression of a senior official who has been corrected in public by a woman and considered it an insult. Under the table, Yi Kang-woo's hand found mine. Just briefly, a single, deliberate pressure. He did not look at me. He was looking at Minister Che with a cold expression the court called formidable, which in this context translated approximately to, correct her and you will have a detailed conversation with me about your department's last 6 policy submissions. Minister Che chose not to say anything. The table returned to its normal volume. Yi Kang-woo's hand released mine. He picked up his teacup. The pressed pine cake at these functions, he said conversationally to no one in particular, is never as good as my household cook's version. I looked at my plate to avoid the expression that was attempting to arrange itself on my face. The third discovery was the most significant. One evening in the 4th month, I came back to the household from a visit to my mother's to find the study lamp lit and Yi Kang-woo at the desk, and on the corner of the desk, placed with the deliberate care of something that has been positioned after consideration, a single white plum blossom, which was supposed to be out of season by 2 months. I stood in the study doorway and looked at it. The Market District florist, Yi Kang-woo said, without looking up from his documents, maintains a small greenhouse for off-season arrangements. It is a modest operation, but the quality is adequate. Yi Kang-woo, I said. Yes? Where did you learn that I like white plum blossoms? He mentioned it, he said. I mentioned it once in passing 3 weeks ago in a conversation about seasonal decorations for the household receiving hall. He turned a page. I told you, he said. I remember most things, especially when it comes to you. I walked to the desk. I picked up the plum blossom. He was very carefully not looking at me, with the focused attention of a man who is reading the same line of text for the 3rd time. Yi Kang-woo, I said. Yes? Put the document down. He put the document down. He looked at me. In the lamplight, the composed court expression he maintained in public was entirely absent. I had not known when I sat in the tea house and agreed to the marriage that I was agreeing to this. Pine cake brought to my desk without comment, a hand under a banquet table at precisely the right moment, an out-of-season plum blossom on the corner of a document desk placed with more care than most people spent on ceremonial arrangements. A man who remembered everything I mentioned in passing. You keep surprising me. Thank you, I said with the plum blossom in my hand, for the flower and for everything else. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair back from my face with the same quiet deliberateness he brought to everything. You are very welcome, he said, landing a soft kiss on my forehead. He picked up his document and pulled me down to sit with him. We worked through the evening, and the lamp burned low, and the plum blossom sat on the corner of the desk between us. I admitted to myself, somewhere between the pine cake, his thoughtful gestures and actions, falling for him.
The court had opinions about the marriage. After all, this was a woman who was once betrothed to the crown prince. The senior officials observed it closely. What they found was a grand princess consort who attended court functions with the pleasant composure of a woman who has no interest in performing for an audience,
and therefore no reason to be nervous about one. What they also found, a grand prince who was, at formal court functions, approximately 80% more likely to smile than he had been previously when he was with the grand princess. The court noted this, found it slightly alarming, and chose to attribute it to administrative satisfaction rather than examine the alternative. The first formal court gathering after the marriage also produced the first encounter with Cha Yen-hee in her official capacity. She crossed the hall toward me with her hands outstretched in the gesture I now recognized as her standard greeting approach, the warm reach, the practiced sisterly warmth. She stopped at the correct distance and performed the formal bow, the bow of a crown princess to a grand princess. She had not wanted to, that was visible, but protocol was protocol and the court was watching. She rose. Her smile was in place. "Royal aunt," she said, "you look wonderful." I looked at her with the pleasant expression I had recently discovered I did not need to perform. It arrived naturally in the presence of people I found entirely not worth my time. "Crown Princess," I said with a slight nod. "I hope we can be close as family," she said. "We are both members of the imperial household now. I hope any past misunderstandings—" "There were no misunderstandings," I said pleasantly. "Everything was understood very clearly." She paused. I smiled. Her smile stayed in place, which I had to admit took some effort, and she moved on. The drama, when it came, was her own doing. It happened at the formal seasonal court banquet, the full assembly, every senior official present, the entire apparatus of court ceremony arranged in the main hall. Yi Kang-woo was at the head table in his official position. I was seated at the appropriate place for the Grand Princess Consort, which was above the Crown Princess's position in the seating arrangement. Cha Yen-hee arrived late. This was not accidental. Her arrival disrupted the seating ceremony at a moment designed to redirect attention toward her entrance, which was executed with the practiced grace of someone who has timed such things before. She was wearing a new set of crown princess robes, more elaborate than standard, with embroidery that pushed the boundary of the sumptuary regulations for her rank. She swept past the official seating arrangement and stopped at the table where I was seated. "Royal aunt," she said, with the warm smile fully deployed, "there seems to have been an error in the seating arrangement. Surely the position adjacent to His Highness the Grand Prince is more appropriate for his consort. I will ask the head unch to adjust." The hall had gone very attentive. "The seating arrangement was prepared by the Imperial Protocol Office," I said pleasantly, "following the established precedent for rank order." I looked at her. "Is the Crown Princess suggesting that the Protocol Office made an error?" "Not an error," Cha Yen-hee said, with the tone of someone who is extremely confident about what she is about to do. "Simply an oversight. Given the newness of the arrangement, it is understandable that the hierarchy might be misread." She reached forward and physically moved the place setting in front of me. The hall was completely silent. I looked at the moved place setting. I looked at Cha Yen-hee. She was smiling with the full warmth of someone who has calculated that no one in this hall will counter her because no one wants the political consequence of being wrong. "Crown Princess," I said, in a voice that carried clearly through the silence without being raised. "The hierarchy of this court is not complex. I am the Grand Prince's consort. You are the Crown Prince's consort. The precedence of those positions has been established for 300 years of this dynasty. It does not require interpretation." I tilted my head. "But since the Crown Princess has raised this question, perhaps the Crown Princess would like to explain to the assembled court why she arrived to a formal court banquet after the seating ceremony had concluded, with such elaborate ceremonial robes, which also appear to carry some additional embroidery detail that is above your current rank level. I would be happy to assist by teaching the Crown Princess the imperial household rules, since it seems you were not educated on such manners." I paused. "At your convenience, of course." The smile on Cha Yen-hee's face went through 3 distinct stages in very rapid succession. Stage 1, the maintained warmth. Stage 2, the brief involuntary fracture. Stage 3, embarrassment with a hint of anger. She picked up the tea vessel from the table beside her. She was going to pour it on me. I could see the decision complete itself in her face in the half-second before she moved. I caught her wrist. Not hard, I simply held it, in full view of the entire assembled court, with the calm grip of someone who had anticipated this possibility and had made a decision about it. The tea vessel hung suspended between us. The hall was not breathing. I looked at Cha Yen-hee over the vessel. "You actually dare?" I asked, quietly, just for her. Her hand was trembling. I released her wrist. I took the tea vessel from her hand, set it back on the table with precision, and moved my place-setting back to where it had been. Then I sat down and picked up my own cup with the composure of someone for whom none of the last 30 seconds had been particularly surprising. Cha Yen-hee stood for a moment that lasted longer than any moment in that hall should have lasted. Then she walked to her seat, which was below mine in the seating arrangement, and sat. The court found something very important to look down at on its respective tables. At the head table, Yi Kang-woo had not moved during any of this, but when I looked up, he was looking at me with the expression that in public appeared as composed neutrality, and that I had now learned to read as something else entirely. He picked up his cup and drank his tea with unhurried satisfaction of a man watching something go exactly as expected. Under the table, I found his foot with mine. He went extremely still for 1 second. I looked at my own cup, then I smiled.
My mother came for a visit without warning. She walked in with her head steward, a document case under her arm, and the expression she wore when she had already made decisions and was now delivering them. She asked to be taken to the private sitting room. By the time I arrived, she was already seated, papers spread across the table in front of her. "Sit," she said. I sat. She placed one document in front of me without a word, a letter. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, the kind a person uses when they want to be understood and not identified. No name at the top, no signature at the bottom. "Where did this come from?" I asked. "My contact in the Western merchant circle," she said, another beside it. He flagged an unusually large money transfer. Followed it, it led to a name. I looked at the second document. A record of payments, regular, disciplined, moving through 3 different merchant accounts before disappearing into the south. "Whose name?" I asked. My mother looked at me. "Minister Cha," she replied, "the Crown Prince's father." The room was quiet for a moment. She tapped the payment record. These transfers did not begin when she married. They began 6 years ago, long before she ever set foot in the capital. She placed a third document on the table, older than the others, the paper slightly worn at the edges. "This is a record of allegiance," she continued, "signed by Minister Cha, witnessed by 2 officials I've since confirmed were removed from their positions after the Emperor's coronation." I picked it up. The language was formal, the kind used in official pledges, but the name at the top was not the Emperor's. Prince Yi Hyun, the eldest prince of the previous emperor and the current emperor's eldest brother. The previous empress's son, the one who had raised an army against his own brother after the coronation and lost, and had been sent to the southern border with the promise he would never return. I set the document down. "Her family is loyal to Prince Yi Hyun," I said. "Long before the coronation of the current emperor," my mother folded her hands on the table. "When Yi Hyun lost the rebellion and was sent south, most of his loyalists were removed from their positions. Minister Cha survived because nobody looked at him closely enough. He was a small man with a small title, not worth the investigation." But Yi Hyun knew where his loyalists were, I said. Yes. She placed the last document in front of me. Another letter, this one from the south, recent, the ink barely 3 months old, not to the minister this time, to Yan He directly. The instructions were brief. Maintain the position, continue passing information, the cause is not finished. I read it twice. Then I put it down and looked at my mother. She was never here for the crown prince, I said. She was here for the imperial family, my mother replied. He was just the door. Cha Yan He Piluvi. I stood at the window of my chambers long after my maid had gone to sleep. The capital at night was quiet from up here, lanterns along the main road, the distant sound of the watch patrol, the ordinary sounds of a city that did not know what was moving beneath its surface. I pressed one hand against the window frame. I felt tired. Not the tiredness of a long day or a difficult week, the bone-deep tiredness of a person who had been performing every hour of every day for years without a single moment that belonged only to herself. I had not chosen this. I wished people understood that, even though no one ever would. I had not looked at Prince Yi Hyun across a room and decided to give my life to his cause. I had been very young when her father sat me down and explained, in the quiet voice he used when he was not asking but telling, that the family's future depended on Yi Hyun's success and that I had a role to play in it. I had not said yes. I had simply not been given the option of no. Yi Hyun had come to our household once to meet me. He had assessed me the way merchants assessed goods, looking for value, looking for usefulness, calculating what I was worth to his plans. He was not unkind about it, he was simply indifferent to me as a person, which was its own kind of cruelty. He had given me instructions and I had followed them. I had come to the capital. I had found Yi Jun-woo, gentle, trusting, completely unable to imagine that the woman he loved was not what she appeared. I had performed warmth for him every day, answered his trust with careful information management, smiled at court functions until my face ached from it. And I had watched Yoon Chai-ha from across every room they occupied at the same time. That was the part nobody would ever see clearly enough to understand. Chai-ha, with her family who showed up without being asked, her father who stayed home from the border because she needed him, her brother who placed celery in her bowl and looked at the wall afterward, her mother who fought the Empress herself rather than let her daughter be reduced. All of it given freely, none of it performed. Meanwhile, I had grown up in a household where love was a transaction and loyalty was a leash. I watched Chai-ha move through the world with the ease of someone who had never once wondered whether the people behind her would stay, and I had hated her for it with a feeling so clean and constant that it almost felt like relief. At least that was real, at least that belonged to me. I turned away from the window. The child was 3 months along. Yi Jun-woo did not know the truth of it. I had told him I was pregnant and asked him to keep it quiet until I was certain the pregnancy was stable. He had agreed immediately, delighted, asking no questions. Yi Hyun's directive had been clear. Get inside the palace, get the marriage documented, make the child legitimate before anyone could look too closely. I had been this. I pressed my hand flat against my stomach. I did not let myself think past the next step. That was the only way I had ever survived any of this. One step, then the next, and never looking at the full length of the road ahead. Outside, the watch patrol passed below the window. I let the curtain fall and went to bed. I gave the information my mother had passed to me to Kang-woo. For 2 weeks, he left before dawn and came back long after I had gone to sleep. I would hear him sometimes, the quiet sound of the study door, the lamp being lit, the particular stillness of a man working through the night on something he was not yet ready to bring to me. I did not ask. He would tell me when he was ready. On the 15th night, he came back earlier than usual. I was still awake, the levy revision on my lap, when he walked in and sat at the edge of the desk. He looked at me for a moment. Then he reached into his outer robe and placed a document on the table.
then another, then another. "The Cha family allegiance record," he began. "The payment transfers, the directive letters from Yi Hyun. Each document placed with the flat precision of a man who has been carrying this for 2 weeks and is now setting it down. The border intelligence correspondence, everything your mother found, confirmed, documented, ready to be presented to the emperor." I looked at the documents spread across the table. "And then," he continued, a brief pause before the last one, "there is this. A physician's record." I picked it up. The date of conception was 3 weeks before Yen-hee ever set foot in the capital. The room was very quiet. "The child in her stomach," I said, "is Yi Hyun's." His voice was even. "She arrived in the capital already carrying it. The marriage to Yi Jun-woo was to make it legitimate, a bloodline inside the palace walls, his heir raised as the crown prince's eldest son, a future claim to the throne hiding in plain sight." I set the document down. I looked at the wall for a moment. Then I looked at him. "When do you go to the emperor?" "Tomorrow morning," Yi Kang-woo replied. I nodded once. He reached over and extinguished the lamp. He left before the household was awake. I sat through the morning with tea I did not drink, watching the light change through the study screens, thinking about documents he had shown me the night before. The emperor received him in his private study, not the formal audience chamber, the private study, the room where the emperor worked without the court watching, where the lacquered desk was always covered in the organized density of a man who governed by reading everything himself rather than letting his ministers summarize it for him. He looked up when Yi Kang-woo entered. "Brother," he set his brush down, "sit." They talked first about small things, the Northern Circuit inspection, the new levy revision, how I was settling into the household. The emperor asked about my mother's merchant network with the interest of a man who had long understood that the most accurate information in the capital moved through commercial channels rather than official ones. Yi Kang-woo answered each question. Then the emperor looked at him and said simply, "Now tell me, why have you asked to see me?" Yi Kang-woo opened the document case. He placed everything on the desk one at a time. The Cha family allegiance record, the payment transfers, the directive letters, the border intelligence correspondence, operational details pulled from inside the palace walls, routed south to a man sitting on a border who had never stopped believing the throne was his. The emperor read each document in full. He did not speak. He turned each page with the unhurried attention of a man who reads everything himself and draws his own conclusions. His face remained composed, the particular composure of a man who has governed through worse and has learned not to let what he feels show until he has decided what to do about it. But his eyes were not composed. When he reached the last document in the stack, Yi Kang-woo did not place it immediately. The emperor noticed the hesitation. "You have more," he said, not a question. Yi Kang-woo placed the physician's record on the desk. He stated the date, he stated what the date meant, he stated the physician's name and where his investigator had found him. The emperor looked at the record for a long time. Then he set it down with the same careful precision he had used for every other document, and placed both hands flat on the desk. "Your wife," he said quietly, "and her mother, they found this." "Yes," Yi Kang-woo replied. "She brought the initial documents to me. I conducted the formal investigation from that point." The emperor looked at the far wall. A long silence. Then he called out, "Is anyone there?" His head eunuch appeared in the doorway within seconds. "Send a royal summons," the emperor said, his voice back to its full authority. "Grand Princess Yoon and her mother, the crown prince and the crown princess." A pause. "The main hall, 1 hour." We arrived in sequence. My mother and I were first,
received into the main hall by the head eunuch, and shown to our positions. Yi Kangwu was already standing to the right of the emperor's seat, his hands behind his back, his face carrying the composed neutrality the court called formidable. The crown prince arrived next, alone, in his full retinue. He had clearly been pulled from his morning routine and had not yet been told why he was here. He scanned the room when he entered, reading the arrangement of people, the weight of the atmosphere. His eyes landed on me briefly before moving to Yi Kangwu and then to the emperor's empty seat at the head of the hall. He knew something was wrong. He did not know how wrong. We waited. Then the doors opened a final time. Cha Yanyi walked in. She was not surprised. I could see it immediately, the absence of the particular tension that appears in a person who has been caught unawares. She had known this was coming. Her people must have told her the moment Yi Kangwu's investigations had started moving south, and she had spent the weeks since preparing her face for exactly this room. She walked in with a measured, unhurried step, in her canwa, her hands folded, her expression carefully neutral. Yi Junwoo crossed the hall to her the moment he saw her. "Young He." He reached her side, one hand moving to support her arm, his face shifting from the controlled tension of a man waiting for bad news into the instinctive protectiveness of one who has seen the woman he loves walk into a room that feels like a trap. "Are you okay?" She smiled at him, a small, tired smile. She let him guide her forward. For just a fraction of a second, a half-breath, a single blink, something moved across her face. Not relief, not gratitude, something that looked from where I stood very much like guilt. Then it was gone. The emperor entered. Everyone in the hall dropped into the formal bow. He took his seat. He looked across the assembled faces, my mother, myself, Yi Kangwu, the crown prince, and finally Yan Yi standing beside Yi Junwoo with her hands folded and her eyes lowered. The hall was absolutely silent. "Cha Yan Yi." His voice filled the room without being raised. "Kneel." She knelt. "Imperial father." Yi Junwoo stepped forward immediately, his voice carrying the controlled urgency of a man who has not yet read the room correctly. "The crown princess is with child. She should not be subjected to—" "You fool." The emperor's voice came down like a blade. Yi Junwoo went still. "You stand there defending her." The emperor reached forward and swept the document case off the table beside him, papers scattered across the floor between them. "And you do not even realize that you have been made a fool of." Yi Junwoo looked at the documents at his feet. He bent and picked up the first one, read it, picked up the second. The hall watched him in silence as he moved through them, his face cycling through the stages of a man reading his own life being rewritten in front of him. Disbelief first, the polite disbelief of someone certain there has been an error, then the slow, terrible arrival of comprehension. He reached the physician's record. He read the date. He read it again. Then he looked down at Yan Yi kneeling beside him. "Yan Yi." His voice had changed. It trembled. "What is this?" Not a question, the voice of a man who already knows and is asking anyway because he needs to hear what she does with it. "Is what I just read here true?" Yan Yi did not look up. She did not deny it, she did not beg, she did not arrange her expression into wounded fragility and aim it at him the way she had aimed every other expression across the past few months. She simply bowed her head and said nothing. The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the hall. Then Yi Junwoo laughed. Not a real laugh, the sound a person makes when something has gone so far past what they can process that laughter is the only release valve left. Short, sharp, almost unrecognizable as amusement. He straightened. His eyes moved across the room. My mother, Yi Kangwoo, the emperor, and finally me. They stopped on me. His expression was not anger and it was not grief. It was the face of a man reading something he should have read a long time ago and understanding, finally, exactly what it says. "You knew," he said, quiet now, flat. "All of you knew." Nobody answered him. He turned back to the emperor. He performed the formal bow, deep, correct, the bow of a crown prince to his emperor, and perhaps the last time he would ever perform it as such. "Imperial father." His voice was steady. "You may deal with this matter as you feel fit." One last look at me, then he walked out of the hall. No one stopped him. The doors closed behind him. The emperor looked at Yan Yi still kneeling on the floor. She had not moved through any of it. She was still in the same position, head bowed, hands in her lap, the face of a woman who has arrived at the end of a very long road and has nothing left to perform. The emperor's eyes were cold as he looked down on her.
The Bureau of Punishment was not a place the court liked to acknowledge existed. It sat at the eastern edge of the palace complex, behind two walls and a gate that had no ceremonial dressing, no painted columns, no carved roof tiles, nothing that suggested the building behind it was part of the same palace that held the throne room and the formal gardens. It was functional and plain, and it did what it was built to do without decoration. Yan He was taken there directly from the main hall. The confession took 3 days. Not because she resisted. She did not resist. She sat across from the Bureau's recording official, and she spoke in the flat, careful tone of someone who has already calculated that cooperation is the only remaining variable she can control. She named everything: the Cha family's allegiance to Yi Hyun going back to the years before the current emperor took the throne, her father's role in the loyalist network, the directives she had been given, the information she had passed south, the correspondence, the border intelligence, the plan that had been running beneath the surface of the court for years. The recording official wrote without looking up. When she reached the child, she paused for the first time. The official waited. She stated the date of conception. She stated Yi Hyun's directive, the child to be made legitimate through the marriage to the crown prince consort, to be raised inside the palace walls, to be positioned as a forerunner for the throne in the next generation should Yi Hyun's rebellion fail. She stated this with the same flat tone she had used for everything else. The official wrote it down. The confession was sealed and delivered to the emperor by the evening of the 3rd day. The sentencing was delivered in the main hall with the full court assembled. Kang Wu had told me how it went. The emperor sat at the head of the hall with the sealed confession on the table before him. Yan He was brought in and made to kneel. The emperor read the formal charges: treason against the imperial household, active participation in a rebellion plan, deliberate deception of a member of the imperial family, passing of military intelligence to an exiled prince with known intentions against the throne. The punishment for these crimes, the emperor said, is death. The hall was silent. However, he looked at Yan He kneeling on the floor, her hands in her lap, her face still. You carry a child, and regardless of the circumstances of its conception, it carries the blood of this imperial house on one side. He let that sit for a moment. You are stripped of the position of crown princess consort with immediate effect. All titles, privileges, and rank attached to that position are hereby revoked. He looked down at the documents before him. You will be exiled to the southern border permanently. You will not return to the capital, not in this lifetime. This is the grace your child buys you. Do not mistake it for anything more than that. He turned to the next page. Minister Cha Byung-soo and all members of the Cha household representatives, his voice did not change, stripped of all titles and official positions with immediate effect, demoted to commoner status, exiled to the southern border alongside the former crown princess. A pause. For the next 5 generations, no member of the Cha bloodline is permitted to enter the capital or sit for the imperial examinations. This is recorded in the official court register and will be enforced accordingly. From the side of the hall, the sound of something, a breath, a small broken sound, from the direction where the Cha family's household representatives were standing. The former Crown Prince Yi Jun-woo. The hall shifted. Yi Jun-woo was standing to the right, alone, without the crown prince's ceremonial position he had occupied at every court assembly since his designation. He had come in plain robes. He knew before he arrived what was coming. "Your title is stripped," the emperor said, "on the grounds of incompetence in the management of your own household and the people within it, rendering you unfit to govern a nation." He looked at his son for a long moment. "You will be assigned to the northern fiefdom. You will leave the capital within the month. You will administer your territory competently, and you will not return to the capital unless summoned." Yi Junwoo performed the bow. "As Imperial Father commands," he said. His voice was steady. He straightened, and his eyes moved one final time, across the hall. The look lasted a moment. Then he turned and walked out. 3 days after the sentencing, Yi Kang-woo left again before dawn. He was gone for 2 days. He came back on the second evening with road dust on his outer robe and sat at the desk without changing and poured 2 cups of tea. I sat across from him and waited. Yi Hyun received a visitor, a physician dispatched from the capital. The prince has developed a condition affecting the use of his legs. He picked up his cup. He will not be moving from the southern border. I looked at him. He drank his tea. "The physician's visit," I said, "was that the emperor's arrangement, or yours?" "It was managed quietly, between us. It was the promise the emperor had made to his father as he lay on his deathbed. I will not kill my brothers." The emperor kept his promise. Technically. I picked up my cup. "And the child?" I asked. Yi Hyun left abruptly. "Born in exile, raised in exile. The succession record will reflect no connection to the imperial household," Yi Kang-woo said. He set his cup down. "Yi Hyun's backup plan ends before it begins." Outside the study window, the capital was settling into evening, the last light going from the sky, the lanterns coming up along the main road, one by one. He came 3 weeks after the sentencing. I was walking the outer garden when the head steward appeared at the entrance, with the expression he wore when he had information he would have preferred not to deliver. "My lady," he bowed slightly, "Prince Yi Junwoo is at the outer gate. He is asking to see you." I looked at him for a moment. "Let him in," I said. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not in height, in the way a person looks when the architecture they have been standing inside has been removed, and what is left is only the person, in plain outer garments. The bearing was still there. 20 years of court training did not simply disappear, but the certainty that had always sat underneath it was gone. He stopped a few paces away from me. The persimmon tree stood bare above us. The garden was quiet. "Cheha," he said. I waited. "I was wrong," he said, "about everything, about her, about—" He stopped, started again. "About you. I shouldn't have chosen her. I made a mistake." I said nothing. "I know that you still have feelings for me. 7 years, Cheha. You cannot simply stop feeling things because the situation changed." I tilted my head. "You married my uncle," he continued, with the growing confidence of a man who has convinced himself of something and is now presenting it because you were angry with me. "I understand that, but we both know you did it out of spite. You wanted me to see what I had lost. You wanted me to regret. I understand that now. I truly regret everything. We can start over, far away from her, just us. You do not actually—" "Stop," I said. He stopped. "I want to make sure," I said pleasantly, "that I am understanding you correctly. You are suggesting that I married the Grand Prince, a man of significantly more intelligence, integrity, and genuine affection than you have displayed in the combined sum of our 7-year acquaintance, as a way to spite you?" He opened his mouth. "You are also suggesting that I do not actually love my husband, that 7 years of our engagement, in which I was treated as a convenience rather than a partner, somehow supersedes everything I have experienced in this marriage?" I paused. "And your solution is that I should elope with you?" He looked at me with the expression of a man who had rehearsed this conversation in his head and is discovering that the version in his head was missing several key variables. You must think that I am extraordinarily foolish. You might be an idiot who does not think, but that does not mean everyone around you is equally foolish. Something shifted in his face. You are standing in my husband's garden, I said, telling me that my marriage, which is the best thing that has happened to me in all my years of living, is a performance of emotion directed to spite you? I looked at him steadily. Do you hear yourself? The wounded look left his face. What replaced it was harder. I know you, he said. He stepped forward and reached for my arm. I know that you... I slapped him. Hard. Open palm, right cheek. The full and deliberate force of every gracious silent moment I had spent performing a version of myself I never was. The sound of it crossed the garden like a door being shut very firmly. He went completely still. I looked at my hand. I have, I said, with perfect composure, been wanting to do that for a very long time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. His hand went to his face. His expression moved through shock and arrived somewhere with more heat in it. You. He reached for me again. A hand closed around his wrist. Yi Kung-woo. He had appeared from the direction of the study corridor. I had not heard him, but he was there, solid and absolute, his grip on Yi Jun-woo's wrist carrying the precise force of a man who was decided exactly how much pressure the situation required. A crack, the sound of bone breaking, then the scream that followed it. Yi Jun-woo's face drained of color entirely. Yi Jun-woo, Yi Kung-woo said. Even, completely even. You come into my home, reach for my wife. He looked at Yi Jun-woo with the expression the court spent years calling formidable, and that I had long since learned meant something considerably more specific. Do you put me in your eyes? Do you understand how little of my patience you are currently standing inside? Yi Jun-woo's face was gray. Yi Kung-woo continued. The propriety of this court exists for reasons. One of them is preventing situations that cannot be undone. He released the wrist. I am being extremely restrained. He turned toward the garden entrance. Guards. 4 of his personal guard appeared with the speed of people who had been close and paying attention. Prince Jun-woo was to be returned to his residential quarters. He stays there until his formal exile arrangements are completed. If he attempts to leave before then, send word to me directly. A pause. Throw him out. The guards looked at Yi Jun-woo. Yi Jun-woo looked at me, one last time, the look of a man arriving, too late, at a correct assessment. Then the guards moved and he was gone, and the gate closed, and the garden was quiet again. Yi Kung-woo turned to me. He looked at my right hand, the palm still faintly pink from the impact. He reached into his inner robe and produced a folded square of soft linen. He took my hand and cleaned it with the focused attention of a man for whom this is currently the most important task available. I watched him do this. You were listening from the corridor, I said. I heard him in the garden, he replied, without looking up. I came to see if you needed assistance. And when it was clear I didn't? I stayed. He folded the cloth. To see how it ended. I slapped him. You watched me slap him? Yes. I looked at him. He looked back at me. Kung-woo, I said. He pulled me into his arms with the same matter-of-fact decisiveness he brought to all his better decisions. His hand came up to the back of my head, and he pressed a kiss to my forehead and held on. Not dramatically, not with ceremony, just with the solid, unhurried certainty of a man who has no intention of letting go any time soon. I stayed where I was. The persimmon trees stood bare and patient overhead. He said I married you to spite him, I said, into his robes. I heard. He said I don't actually love you. I heard that too. He was wrong, I said. Yi Kung-woo's arms tightened slightly. I know, he said.
The emperor named Ye Song-jun crown prince on a clear morning in the 2nd month of the new year. The ceremony was full court, every official in formal attendance, the hall arranged with the complete weight of imperial ritual, the kind of occasion the palace reserved for moments it wanted the kingdom to remember. Yi Songjun stood on the dais in his new robes and received the crown prince's seal with the careful posture of someone who had been preparing for this without knowing he was being watched. Afterward, he found me in the garden corridor. He was still in the ceremonial robes, the formal crown sitting slightly large on his head. He stopped in front of me and performed the bow, sincere, correct, the bow of a young man who means it. "Royal aunt," he said. "Crown prince," I replied. He straightened. He looked at me with the serious, slightly overwhelmed expression of someone carrying something heavier than expected and determined not to drop it. "I will do it well," he said. Not a promise made for an audience, a statement of intention directed at the one person in the corridor. "I know," I said. "Go eat something. You haven't touched a full meal since yesterday." He blinked. Then something loosened in his face, the overwhelming weight of the morning shifting just slightly into something more manageable, and he nodded and walked back toward the hall. My father's chronic pain miraculously resolved itself that spring. He sent word from the northern border circuit in the 4th month that his condition had improved sufficiently for him to resume full inspection duties, a development he described in 3 sentences before spending the remaining 2 pages of the letter on the quality of the garrison's spring barley crop and a territorial dispute between 2 border merchants he found intellectually interesting. My mother read the letter at our standing Tuesday morning meeting, set it down, and said nothing for a moment. Then, "He is well." 2 words. That was all. But the way she said them. Ji-hoon returned to the Board of Justice in the 3rd month. He had been home long enough. The backlog had been managed in his absence by 3 junior officers whose methods he described upon reviewing their work as adequate but structurally inconsistent. He went back with the energy of a man who has rested exactly as long as he needed to, and not 1 day more. My second brother, Ji-won, came home for dinner every Sunday. He had stopped measuring his food portions sometime in the 2nd month, and none of us mentioned it. He was also, gradually, learning to let cases go at the end of the working day, rather than carrying them home. The Empress and my mother maintained their friendship. They did not speak about the events of the preceding months. They did not need to. 30 years of knowing each other had produced a bond that could hold one deep disagreement and continue. They met for tea on the 1st Tuesday of every month. My mother always came home from these meetings in a slightly better mood than she left in, which she attributed to the quality of the palace kitchen's pressed pine cake, and which had nothing to do with the palace kitchen's pressed pine cake. Yi Songjun came to the Grand Prince's household every week. He ate unreasonable quantities at dinner. He would ask my mother questions about the capital's merchant network and trade routes with the focused hunger of a young administrator who has realized that the most accurate picture of the kingdom does not live in official reports. He brought his policy drafts and left with margin notes in 2 different hands, mine in black ink, Yi Kang-woo's in red, and returned the following week with revisions that addressed every note and occasionally argued back against 2 or 3 of them with enough supporting reasoning to be taken seriously. He was going to be good at this. One evening in late spring, Yi Kang-woo came to the study to find me standing at the window rather than at the desk. He set his border report down. "You're not working," he observed. "I'm thinking," I said. He came and stood beside me. The spring evening outside was warm, the persimmon trees just beginning to show their new leaves, the garden below the window green and unhurried in the fading light. I looked down at my hands. They were resting against my stomach. I had not entirely decided to place them there. They had simply arrived. I looked at them for a moment. Then I looked up at Yi Kang-woo. He was already looking at me, not at the window, not at the garden, at me, with the expression of a man who has noticed something and waiting with the particular quality of patience that was entirely specific to him. "Kang-woo," I said. Yes, he replied, quietly. I looked back down at my hands. I think, I said, that you should send for the physician tomorrow morning. A silence. Then his hand came over mine, both of them, warm and steady, covering my hands where they rested. He did not say anything. He did not need to. Outside the study window, the persimmon trees moved gently in the evening air, their new leaves catching the last of the light, patient and unhurried, and full of the particular certainty of things that know what they are about to become.